And we will be talking about equations where you have the sine or cos or tan of a given angle in that, and we want to find a pronumeral or a given unknown, which is not the angle itself, but the equation itself involves a trigonometric ratio. So first of all, you got to remember that when we're talking about sine of an angle or cos of an angle or tan of an angle, it is a number that you can find using your calculator. So any angle, as we talked in previous lesson, will have a sine, a cos, and a tan, which is the ratio in each case. Like for example, in the case of sine, it is opposite over hypotenuse. In the case of cos, it was adjacent over hypotenuse, and in the case of tan, it was opposite over adjacent. Now, what that ratio becomes for 30 degrees, it becomes half. For if you're talking about sine, for cos 30 degree, it becomes 0.866. This goes forever, so we have taken only 3 decimal places. And tan 30 degree also is decimal that goes forever, but we have taken it to 3 decimal places. So remember that it was a fraction, all of them were fraction, but fractions can be turned into decimals by dividing the numerator by the denominator. That's what has happened here. All right. Assume you've been given sine 30 is equal to x on 5. So here, this is an equation. Usually, in previous examples, we had a number, like for example, you had 4 equal to x on 5. And then you would have solved that equation. In this case, we don't have a certain number, but we have sine 30. Then we want to see how we can solve it. Remember that sine 30, as we discussed, is half. So I can replace sine 30 with half. Half is equal to x on 5, for example, if I had. Then I can solve it that way. So this is the solution for an equation like sine 30 is equal to x on 2. So sine 30 is equal to x on 2, and we basically solve that. So you have sine 30 degrees is equal to x on 2. Okay, so now that's the equation they want us to solve this equation. To solve that equation, you got to remember that, as we said, sine 30 is half. So I can replace it with half equal to x on 2. Now we know how to solve this equation by, because x has been divided by 2, you got to times it by 2. So times by 2, but you got to times the other side also by 2. And half times 2 becomes 1, and x divided by 2 times by 2, that 2 cancels, you end up with x. So x equal to 1 is the answer to this equation. The answer to this equation. Then probably I change also this to 2, not meant to be 2. All right, now here what we did, we replaced sine 30 with half. But in practice, you don't need even to do that. Just you can keep sine 30 and times both sides by 2 and then enter the whole thing in your calculator. As an example, here you have sine 20 is equal to x on 12. Sine 20 degrees is equal to x on 12, and they want us to find x. Again, x has been times by 12. So we need to undo it, divided by 12. We need to undo it by timesing it by 12. So you write your equation and times both sides by 12. The purpose is to get rid of that 12. But you got to times the other side also by 12. So when you times this side by 12, you get 12 times sine 20. And here 12 and 12 cancels out, you get x. Now your x is 12 times sine 20. And I can just put the whole thing in my calculator and get the answer. Type this in your calculator and you get the x. It comes as 4.102 2 decimal places. As you can see, I didn't need to replace sine 20 with its value from my calculator. I just times both sides by 12 and then entered the whole thing in my calculator to find the answer. As another example, here you have cos 35 is equal to pi on 8. Again, p divided by 8. P divided by 8, so p has been divided by 8. We got to undo it. To undo it, you got to times by 8. But you got to times 8 to both sides, so then 8 times cos 35 becomes 8 cos 35 equal to p. There's a times here, but if you don't want it, you don't need to write it. And that 8 and 8 cancels, so p is equal to 8 cos 35. Now type that in your calculator and give it to whatever decimal places they are asking. In this case, I have written to 2 decimal places. So 8 times cos 35 becomes 6.55. So p is 6.55 to 2 decimal places. Another example involving tan this time around. Tan 68 is equal to d over 12.5. Again, what has happened to d? It has been divided by 12 and a half. You got to undo it by timesing by 12 and a half. But do it to both sides. So you get 12 and a half times tan 68 is equal to d because 12 and a half and 12 and a half cancels. Now put that in your calculator and you get 30.94 to 2 decimal places. So d is equal to 30.94, correct to 2 decimal places. Thank you for your attention.